Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to our quick look series. And today I'll try to cover asynchronous Apex. Specifically, we'll talk around Apex batch job. So it's a huge topic itself, right? But I'll try to cover important things. So today's pointers are like uh, interfaces, like batchable, schedulable, allow callout or stateful. Then what are the default methods? Using constructor to pass values to batch class, right? So if you want to pass query dynamically in that context, then what is the importance of finish method? What is batch chaining? Calling a batch via trigger, calling batch from async context, and vice versa. Then using database dot insert update methods instead of normal insert update. Start method returning query locator versus list of record. Batch use cases. How many batches can run in parallel? What is the importance of batchable context variable, right, that we see in these methods? Where to check batch job status, future callouts, whether those are allowed, and there may be another callout, say for example sending emails. So what is the limitations on that? Batch job, suppose if it is deployed but changes are not reflecting, what could be the reason for that? Then how to change a query in the batch job without deploying the batch code. So if we want to dynamically say the context is here, dynamically we are controlling the trigger on off. Similar way, dynamically we want to control the input query from the to the batch job. So we can create a generic batch job and we can just change the queries and make it run in that context. So yeah, let's go through these things. So the first thing is like, what is a batch job? Why we need a batch job? What are the different use cases, right? So batch job is nothing but something asynchronous Apex, which will come with a higher limits, right? Say you have a large set of data. So you have say 10 million rows, and in that rows, as per business need, you are adding a new variable or new field, and that field is calculated, and it is having dependency on multiple other fields or records related to that particular record. So in this scenario, whatever new records that you are already taking care, say in trigger logic or somewhere, but what about the existing 10 million rows which are already into the database? If you want to update that, that is a scenario where you want to do a one time update, and it has a dependency. So why I am saying that, like, it has a dependency on the code, some business logic is required, because for one time data load you can always go and use data loader, right? Why to go and write a Apex batch job, maintain that batch job, schedule it, write a test class and all that stuff, right? So in order to avoid that, you can always go for using a data loader, but in our case it is depending on some other records, so we need to implement that logic. So one time data load with some logic, business logic, that case. Another is, if you want to, say you want to send an email at regular time interval, every week you want to send some email, and in that email you want to process some set of records from your database, right? So in that case also, right, so you want to do something on a or at a regular time interval, right? So that these are the two common scenarios, right, where we go for batch job. This will come for huge data, right? So data is high. In that case, processing that huge amount of data in chunks, that's where we use a batch job, right? And the benefit of batch job is it is asynchronous, it has higher limits, right? You can go and check on the governor limits for asynchronous Apex. Okay, now if you see here in the batch job, what we have done, we have used some interfaces here: batchable, stateful. We can always use allow call out, right? There are other interfaces as well that we can use. So, and with this interface, we will have to have these three methods implemented. It enforces those, right? Start, execute, finish. So start method is used for getting the data set of record that you want to process. Execute method is for your business logic, and finish method is generally used for notification. So whatever batch you are processing data, if you want to handle that notification, right, whether the batch is complete, not complete, if it is errored, what are the errors, if you want to handle all those things, you will always use a finish method. Okay, so these are the three methods that we should remember. Finish method we can use either for sending the notification, or there is another scenario that I'll come to that point, right? So these are the three methods that we need to use in a batch job. Now what is the use of stateful, right? Say you have one variable which is maintaining count of your batch, how many batches has executed, right? Count of your batch. So what we can do, we need this variable to be incremented for every batch, and when your batch processing is complete, after finish you want to check how many, batches you have run. Say there are, say, 500 or 1000 records, right? And your batch size you have given 200. So your execute method will run in the data in the chunk of 200, so it will run 5 times, right? So in that case we are having 5 as a count, expecting 5 as a count printed here. But if you don't use stateful, what will happen? Every time it will take it as a 0 and increment to 1. So it will always print 1 in finish. Okay, so in order to avoid that, if you want to maintain the state, always go by database dot stateful, right? There can be another pointer you might want to contradict or challenge this using, can we do that using static variable? So you go and try it out. Okay, so this is the importance of stateful. Okay, if you want to do a call out from your execute method, right, there are various other points related to call out or integration or REST API, but here we are just looking at whether we can make a call out or not. So yes, we can make a call out from our execute method, provided we have implemented this interface allow call out. Okay, so that's the importance of allowed call out, right? Default methods we have seen this, right? Now importance of finish method also we have covered one pointer. Now we will see, suppose I have a batch or I have a trigger. Can I call a batch from a trigger? So answer is yes. You can call a batch or execute a batch from a trigger. The second parameter we know is always a size. If we don't specify, it is 200 by default. Maximum we can go to 2000. Now with this, you can create a constructor or you can create a object and pass that object as the first parameter to this database dot execute batch. So this is one way of executing a batch from your trigger or any Apex code. Another way of executing batch is using a scheduler. For that class you need to implement schedulable interface, and then you can invoke your batch. So here either you can invoke a batch job if you are processing records and you want to process it into the chunks. If that is not the requirement, you can simply use a Apex class and you can call that Apex class as well from here. It's not mandatory that always from schedule level you have to use a batch job, right? It depends on the requirement. So you can very much call any Apex class as well from here. Okay. Now coming back to this point, right? So what I am doing here, in constructor I am passing a query. So if you want to pass a query dynamically from your code context because you have some dependency, so that case you can either use a constructor or you can create a static variable that you can access, or you can create a variable that you can, invoke on this object, set it there, and then you pass that object here. So there are various ways to do that, right? You can pass the query. It is not mandatory that always you should have your query written statically declare here, right? you can pass dynamically using constructor, and then with that variable you can pass that variable directly here. Okay, that is the way you can pass the query dynamically. There is one another way where you can use either a custom variable, custom metadata, or a custom object, or a static resource, with the help of which you can pass the query dynamically without need of deploying the code, making the changes, testing it, all that efforts, right? You can simply use a variable, a custom label or something. There, admin can go and update, and it will start using from there. So there are various ways you can do that, right? Custom label, custom metadata. It depends, like which one you prefer. Custom object, I won't, suggest. Static resource, if your query is big enough, you can use static resource. You must be knowing static resource are stored on in an object, right? So if I go here, you can query static resource as well, right? Static resource you can query, you can fetch the body, and accordingly you can start using it in your code. Okay, so we have covered, yes, you can call this, right? This also we can cover, we have covered. Now let's look at, now if you are executing a batch and you want to see what is the status of your batch, right? So if you want to see it from UI, you have two options, right? One is you can use developer console. If you execute a batch job, you should be see it in the logs. Suppose I want to execute this. If I execute, I should be able to see it here in the logs. Okay, and the other way could be, right, from UI I can just simply search for jobs and go for Apex jobs. Here I will see what is the status of my job, whether it has run successfully, or if there are any errors, right? It will show errored as well. Okay, its status is showing completed. But what if I want to get that status programmatically without going here? I want an email once the batch job is finished. I want an email, okay, today's batch is successfully completed, because depending on that batch there is a lot of business implication, right? Every day I want to process certain amount of data for the clients, so I need to know whether it was successful or failed, and the reason for that, whether I need to re-trigger or something. So in that case, I'll need a mechanism from my batch itself. I should be able to know what is the status of this batch, and I should be able to send it to the respective stakeholders, right? So if you carefully have seen this, right, in these methods, each method is having a parameter called database dot batchable context, right? So this batchable context is nothing but instance of that batch job. So with this bc dot you can access the id, and every batch which is running, it is stored in the database. So you can always fall back here. If you see apex async as apex job, this will maintain the state. So whatever your record is processed, you can check whether your batch apex, what is the status of that. Okay, if it is processed, not processed, if it is errored, you can always get that details from here, and that you can get from your code. From your finish method you can pass bc.id to this apex async job object, right? And you can check it, verify it from programmatically. So that is again covering the importance of batchable context. Now say I have this batch job which is a asynchronous apex. I am having fresh setup limit. Now what happened, I am trying to call another batch job from this batch job. Okay, so in that context, if I want to call another batch job from this, I know batch job is again asynchronous. So we cannot call one asynchronous from another asynchronous. But here I need to call from one batch job, I want to call another batch job, because there is a dependency. Once these records are finished processing, I want to process another set of records from another object, or depending on this success failure I want to process another set of records. So what I can do is I cannot do it from execute, but I can do it from finish. So from finish I can invoke another batch job using this code, right? Not the same one, but I want to execute another batch job, right? So I can put that code here, say another batch job I want to execute, I can execute it here from here, right? From finish method. So the context here is from one batch job you can call another. So how many batch job you can call? So you can call maximum 5. Even if we are scheduling a batch job, right? So where I can check the whatever batch job are scheduled in the, right, in my sandbox or in my environment. So again I can go to the UI, right? Here I can go to schedule jobs, and here I'll find out how many jobs are there. Now make sure, suppose if you are scheduling another batch job, make sure for that same time we don't have already 5 batch jobs or 5 scheduled jobs already there on that same time. Otherwise it will be a issue, right? At max we can have 5 scheduled job. Even at parallel, whenever batch are executing, only 5 can execute. So to avoid that kind of issues, make sure your batch job is scheduled at a free time slot, right? Try to adjust the batch jobs accordingly. And here you can see whatever existing scheduled jobs are here, right? You must be knowing from where you can schedule and how you can schedule. You can use a programmatically acron expression to schedule. Otherwise you can use that UI to schedule the job. But remember, whenever you are scheduling job, you must use a separate user called batch user or any user, you and give that specific permissions only, right? So that your batch will run in that user's context. Okay, now let me see what all we have covered. Yes, this is also possible. Constructor, yes, we can use constructor to pass. Then calling batch from async, yes, it is possible via chaining, but not future from another future, right? Database insert upset, we'll see. Start method returning query, okay, we'll see to that. Okay, now coming to other points. So suppose you have this query locator, right? So is it mandatory to use query locator always to return set of records wherever we want to process the data? Because there are two ways, either use iterable or use a query locator. So query locator is recommended because it gives us an increased limit, right? 50 million rows. You can always check for the limits on the documentation. And then if you are using iterable, maximum 50,000 rows can be processed. So depending on your requirement, you can choose. Either you want to go ahead with the query locator, or you are damn sure that never it will be more than 50k records. You can use a list that using iterable, right? So these are the two mechanism you can use that. Let me check which one is pending. Query locator we have seen, use cases we have seen, constructor we have seen, how many jobs that also we have seen, importance of batchable context, yes, where to check batch job status also that we have done, future callouts and limits that will skip for this session. Batch job is deployed but changes are not working, this will cover in another session. I think this is enough for this. We'll have another session for that. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and subscribe for getting more updates on this one. And one more thing, always remember to refer to the Salesforce documentation, because things are changing release after release, right? Thank you for watching.